Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey guys, welcome to the New Warehouse Podcast. I am your host, Kevin Lawton. Today I'm having a conversation with Andy Marsh, who is the President and CEO of Plug Power, which is a fuel cell and hydrogen technology company. He's also the chairman of the Fuel Cell and Hydrogen Energy Association, as well as a member of the Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Tactical Advisory Committee. He's also an international representative representing Plug Power on the Hydrogen Council. Andy's going to talk to us today about, you may have guessed it, hydrogen and fuel cell technology. He's going to give us a little bit about his background and explain fuel cell and hydrogen technology to us and how it affects our industry in the distribution and logistics space. He's also going to talk to us a little bit about his thoughts on the future of the industry. So, Andy, welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
Oh, not bad, Kevin, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, happy to have you. You sound like you are the guy when it comes to hydrogen and fuel cell energy. So happy to have you on to talk to the listeners about it.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more modest than that. Many good people in the industry.
Okay. So why don't you tell us, I guess, a little bit about your background and how you got so involved in this industry.
Sure. So in my background, I have a master's degree in power electronics, and I worked for Bell Laboratories for almost 18 years in the generation of power for telecommunication equipment.
Okay.
And then I went off and had a successful startup, a company called Valier Power that provided power for the last mile. But, I've spent my whole life, when I look back to my days in telecommunication at Bell Labs and the startup company I was involved with, really working in broadband and wireless telecom applications, which if you think about the last 30, 40 years, along with data networking, is really the heart of what's been exciting in the business world and it come from an engineering type background. And fortunate, I think that I was able to see about 10, 12 years ago that the world was going to change, the power market and the market for how electric vehicles, be it forklift trucks or cars or Class 8 trucks on the road, that there was a real opportunity in the electrification of transportation and how transportation met commercial applications. And so I've been lucky enough to be the CEO of Plug Power for the last 11 years and have had a chance to be part of some real interesting organizations that you described.
Definitely, yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about those organizations and kind of what they do?
Sure. So the let me start with the Hydrogen Technical Advisory Committee,
okay, which
advises the DOE Department of. It's actually a statutory requirement for the DOE to have outside experts to provide them insights into programs that they will offer for example, for hydrogen and fuel cells specifically. And I sit on that panel, which meets a number of times a year, and we meet with the DOE, and we put together recommendations for Secretary Perry and other folks in the administration. So it's a real interesting experience. The Fuel Cell and Hydrogen Energy Association is the industry association here in the United States that works it's headquartered in Washington, but works across the country to promote hydrogen and fuel cells with local governments as well as with NGOs and other organizations. And the Hydrogen Council is a group of 60 CEOs from large companies as large as Toyota who are really helping provide the vision for the future of hydrogen in society. And, just to give you a feel, this organization, which you look at names, people like Shell Oil, believe that 18% of the energy in the world will actually come from hydrogen by 2050.
Really?
Yeah, really. Yeah, I would say tell your listeners, I would Google Hydrogen Council, and there's some really interesting reports up at that site that were put together by McKinsey and would really give folks a real insight, not into just what's going on in material handling, but the world of hydrogen in general.
Interesting. Yeah, we'll definitely post some links to that on our website that go along with this episode as well. So why don't you start, I guess, with the basics for some of the listeners maybe that are not so familiar with hydrogen and fuel cell technology. Why don't you tell us kind of what that's all about and how that works?
Okay, so it's been around a long time. So, just to give your listeners a feel, the Saturn rocket that put man on the moon actually was powered by a fuel cell. And most of the NASA flights for a long time ran on hydrogen. And a fuel cell is it's an electrochemical energy device, which essentially converts hydrogen and oxygen into water and produces electricity. And that electricity is what we use to power forklift trucks. And probably different than batteries. Batteries are also an electrochemical device. But, when you think about a battery, that essentially has stored chemical energy and it releases that energy over time. With a fuel cell, essentially you have a tank just like you have in a car, and that tank is filled with hydrogen, and that hydrogen feeds a fuel cell. It strips away, it takes a hydrogen atom and strips away the proton, and the electron flows through, and between a combination of oxygen and hydrogen, you produce electricity and water.
Interesting. Taking it back to chemistry class there a little bit. Reminding me of high school.
Right.
Very interesting stuff. So,
and I only got a B in chemistry in high school, so maybe I'm not the best one explaining it.
Well, it sounded good to me, so I think you did a good job. So why don't you tell us, I guess, about Plug Power and how Plug Power is involved in the industry and what you guys actually do?
Sure. So Plug Power, this may surprise you. There's over 25,000 forklift trucks, mostly in the United States, which run on fuel cells. And those fuel cells come from Plug Power. And 200 million hours of operation for these devices. And I was kind of doing some quick math the other day, and I calculated they probably ran over 1 billion hours. And we're doing it. We've done over 18 million hydrogen fueling. So, if you go to a Walmart distribution center, and we're in over 38 Walmart distribution centers, and in those distribution centers, there'll be 3 or 4 hydrogen stations which are distributed around the warehouse. There'll be a hydrogen system outside, and which is providing the hydrogen. And inside the building, the forklift trucks, the batteries have been removed, which, whether it's a brand new truck or an old truck, just a standard forklift truck, and you take the lead acid battery in, and within 30 minutes, you're going to have a fuel cell running the forklift trucks in your operation. So, your listeners may ask, Why would anybody do that? And
I was about to ask.
There's a real that's a good question. There's a real clear value proposition, and look, no one, if you look at my two major customers are Amazon and Walmart, both very cost conscious. Yeah. And let's take the case of Walmart. Traditionally these are 24/7 type warehouses. They may have 3 lead acid batteries, and those lead acid batteries may run for 6-7 hours.
Yeah.
And the battery has to be removed, and you have to drive to a battery room, which uses about 7 or 8% of the space. And so, that process can take anywhere from 10 minutes up to a half hour. With a fuel cell, you can fuel in 2 minutes and be right back operating. A fuel cell, a battery droops in power as you operate.
Yeah.
A fuel cell's constant power continuously, so that there's no degradation in the power of the truck. Just like your car, right? So as long as you have gas, you can go as fast as you like.
Still get the same amount of power. Yeah.
Right. And so the bottom line, Kevin, is that when you look at a typical distribution center, you can have 8 to 10% more productivity, and that's why people like Walmart, Amazon, as well as manufacturers like BMW, are using hydrogen fuel cells. And it's an industry that McKinsey projects, and this kind of growing linearly between now and 2050, that up to 70% of forklift trucks will most likely be powered by hydrogen.
Interesting. So it's the way of the future, it sounds like.
It is the way of the future. And, not to, it sounds like a cliche, but the future is now for us.
I'm sure. So now you mentioned that to swap the battery, it's about a half hour time, and then you mentioned the hydrogen station. So what's involved in, I guess, installing the hydrogen station? Are there mobile stations?
Sure. So if you go to a distribution center, outside there'll be a pad, which will have actually a liquid hydrogen tank in most cases, and a system that converts that liquid into gas. And, that liquid tank, like a gas tank, is filled about once a week. And then, it's piped into the building and on the wall, and it's taking up very, very little space around the building, and strategically located so that it's easy for operators so they don't have to spend a lot of time driving around the building. Yeah. To be able to drive up, connect fill it up just like going to a gas station. Probably the only difference is you actually also hook up an electric data cable so that we can get all sorts of information about the performance of the unit, which can help us improve the quality, provide our customer information about the performance of their operators. So there's a lot of interaction there. And so I mean, we're if you came to me today and said, I want to convert my sites to fuel cells, we can do it in 13 weeks.
Okay, that's not bad. So
yeah.
So what?
And that's probably 2 weeks on site, Kevin. It's 11 weeks procuring material and building parts.
Just getting everything together, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so the hydrogen refueling, now that comes from outside company, or you guys do hydrogen refueling too?
Yeah, I've actually, about 6 years ago, Walmart came to me, and this is how I started building hydrogen stations. And they said to me, essentially, we want one company to do it all. We don't want to buy fuel cells from you and a hydrogen station from someone else, and aftermarket service from someone else. So I ended up becoming, Plug Power has built more hydrogen fueling stations than anyone in the world. We've built 80 and counting. We've also done more fuelings than anyone else. I'm the largest purchaser of liquid hydrogen in the United States, or our company is. And so we built the stations. We also do the aftermarket service. And I think we've been really clever about leveraging the Internet of Things, as well as if you look at some of the algorithms we've built, we have some, what I'm calling the start of rudimentary artificial intelligence. I can tell you many times now when we may have an issue before a customer knows it, so that we can fix that issue before it would impact the customer.
Interesting. So some like predictive maintenance kind of thing.
Yeah, predictive maintenance. So much of our efforts are associated with how to gather as much information as possible. So this activity is seamless to the customer, so they never know.
Very interesting. So now, when you fill up the fuel cell with the hydrogen, how long will that last an operator?
Depends. Some products it'll work for, again, as your listeners know who are experts in this area, I'm going to give you a typical because it'll depend upon the workload and the weight and other items.
Yeah.
But, a Class 3 type truck will generally run 12 to 13 hours. A Class 2 truck is more like 8 hours.
Okay, so you're definitely getting a full shift without having to refuel out of it. Yeah.
Yep.
And some overtime too, it sounds like, possibly. So that's really
but,
good.
That is real. And, these units, Kevin, work in freezers, so, if you go to a Walmart distribution center, we're at minus 25 degrees. I'll put it on Fahrenheit. We're at minus 30 F, and you drive outside, and it's instantaneously 80 F often. So, we designed these to work in rather harsh operations.
Very good. So very flexible, definitely in the operation standpoint. Interesting. So now, what about in terms of, you mentioned you guys are able to kind of see issues possibly before they're going to happen, or predictive maintenance. In terms of maintenance of the battery or the fuel cell, what type of maintenance is involved? And that's something you guys come in and do, or is that something that you have like a facilities on-site person do?
So we have often for large facilities, we'll have our own person on site, and because it's think about like a forklift truck, the cycle of preventive maintenance. Many forklift trucks is about 56 days, and it varies for us based on the environment, but probably every 1,000 hours of operations you want to clean out the filters and do certain items like that, and our staff does that for the customer. And and I think a lot of our predictive maintenance actually comes down to the key element in a fuel cell is the stack. So we have a lot of algorithms to understand the performance of the stack, and really make sure our people in the field know if there's a stack that needs to be replaced, hopefully before the customer experiences any issues.
Okay, interesting. So now, what about, I guess, the fuel cell? Now, what's the life of the fuel cell itself? Is it prolonged?
Yeah. So, it's, I think a good number is, 20,000 hours. But look, that's based on, replacing a couple components, items like the stack. Compressors often have to be replaced. So there are some wear out mechanisms, but almost like a car engine, I mean, you could continue to fix it. I've seen units run in the field up to 34,000 hours.
Oh, wow.
We'll be back after a quick break.
You hear a lot about supply chains these days, because if the past couple years have taught us anything, it's that an efficient, well-managed supply chain is absolutely critical to keeping businesses successful and consumers happy. I'm Will Haywood, and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Join me for insightful interviews with thought leaders and industry experts. We discuss how optimizing supply chains can break down the barriers that are holding businesses back. That's All Business, No Boundaries by DHL Supply Chain. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. That's a lot. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So now, what do you see? And you're really involved in the industry. So what are you seeing are kind of the trends, and what is the future of this industry, and how is the technology going to improve? I mean, you mentioned that you guys are utilizing the Internet of Things, and you're getting some predictive maintenance and moving towards AI. But what else do you see is happening in the future, and what do you think will kind of catch on as we work towards more hydrogen being utilized?
Yeah, I think, Kevin, that and I'm going to take a step back, and I've been probably surprised over the last 2 or 3 years, even if the climate in the U.S. does not seem to be geared towards I would call sustainability. I think you're seeing big commitments from global companies to make sure they have a clean footprint for the future. I think they view that their customers are going to insist upon it. And even if our own government hasn't been that supportive of the Paris Accord, a lot of the large companies in the U.S. are very supportive, and I think you see companies like Amazon, come out with some strong sustainability goals, as well as Walmart. So, and I think that's a trend that's coming, and I think that the other trend, you look at is that there will be in the warehouses higher level of automation. So, today you see lots of robots. You see, I talk about 25,000 units in the field. Probably 10% of those power automatic guided vehicles today. Okay. When I think about our business, I can see that in the future warehouse, I think much higher level of automation. I think devices that are often powered by hydrogen, again because of longer run time. And when you start thinking about, I had a recent acquisition that was announced this week, which is actually a company that focused primarily on drones, but we felt their technology was real applicable to robots in the warehouse, and it's why we made that acquisition. So it's how to support companies for the last mile is something we're really focused on. Those who follow the company probably would also know that we did a deal 2 weeks ago, which was announced with DHL in Germany, where they'll be doing last mile delivery with vans, which will be powered by fuel cells provided by Plug Power.
Oh, that's great news.
Yeah, really cool.
So what is the? Let me ask you, what's the technology, if you can share? What's the technology with the drone company that you guys acquired? That's for last mile delivery. It's.
I think ultimately that will be the area, but today drone. So why would you use it? Why would you use a fuel cell versus a battery? And it's primarily that you can get about 3 times more runtime with fuel cells because of the lighter weight, and so you are able to fly longer. And I think initially those products will be more geared towards applications like bridge inspection and looking at crops and items like that. But ultimately, we think it's a real interesting play for last mile delivery, and without a doubt, fuel cells are when it comes to flying vehicles have really unique advantages versus batteries. If you think about it, that and I'll use a delivery van because I know these numbers pretty well. After 150 miles of range, you can put 30% more packages in a truck using fuel cells versus batteries. And in those commercial type applications like warehouses, last mile deliveries, there's a lot of work going on in this industry for Class 8 trucks. Fuel cells have a unique advantage. And, I'll say this, electric vehicles have a unique advantage. And you can power an electric vehicle with either a fuel cell or a battery. And there's certain applications where batteries make sense, where it's limited range and limited runtime.
Yeah.
But if you have an asset that you want to use 18 hours a day, fuel cells are by far a superior solution.
Very interesting. So you said that with the fuel cell, you'd be able to put 30% more packages into the truck?
Yes. And it's really kind of simple. If you think about it, if you have a box if you have a device that needs a certain level of power, to get a certain range with the fuel cell, if you want to go further and run longer, with the fuel cell you just have to increase the tank size. With a battery, you have to add another battery pack.
Okay. Yeah.
And that factor becomes like a 10-to-1 power density, package density factor. So, after you get to a certain point, fuel cells to go further and run longer take much less space than you require to go further with batteries.
Interesting. So you're actually saving on space, and then you can optimize your truck a little more and get more on there.
Right.
I like that. That's very interesting because one of the huge things, obviously in the industry is, trailer optimization and trying to fit as much as you can to save money, obviously. So that's really, really interesting point as well.
Especially with the cost of drivers, right? I mean, drivers are really tough to get nowadays.
Yeah. So, being able to get more on a truck is definitely a huge deal. Very interesting. So is there anything else that we should know about Plug Power and the hydrogen and fuel cell industry?
Well, Kevin, when I look at this, and I like to, I was fortunate enough to work in the wireless industry in 1983 when nobody ever knew what a piece of wireless gear was. And, it was about 10 to 12 years before that industry started taking off. And I did work in broadband. It went back to 1988. It was about 2003 when that took off.
Yeah.
Now, there's the work that Plug Power has done in fuel cells. I can see the same momentum. I can see the same customer enthusiasm about how the technology can help them. And I also, very much like wireless, it's a little bit different, but I can see more and more new applications coming into play where fuel cells can make sense. And so I find this has been, over the last year or two, the momentum for Plug Power and the momentum for this industry and technology is completely different than it was 10 years ago. So it's a good time to be in the fuel cell space, and if you have some young engineers listening, it'd be good for them to think about entering it. It's a great field.
Well, it sounds like you're able to pick up on the trend. So I would definitely, if I was a young engineer, I would definitely believe what you're saying and take that to heart. So how can people, if they want to find out more about Plug Power, how can they do that?
Well, you can. We have. I probably should have my marketing people be exact, but we have our website. It's plugpower.com. You can follow us on Twitter. We have a Facebook page, and we also we're putting out press releases on a regular basis. So that's some ways you can find more about Plug Power.
All right, definitely. So we'll post all that information as well on the newwarehouse.com. We'll have a blog post associated with the episode. So Andy, thank you so much for joining us today, and happy to be able to hear and share your knowledge with the listeners. So thanks again for being on the show.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the New Warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the New Warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.